Oh, look at the time. It's time for Legal AF After Dark. Federal prosecutors and former federal prosecutors are joining forces against Donald Trump. Jack Smith, of all people, is leading the charge of over 100 federal prosecutors, writing an open letter to give a backbone, a spine, and give courage to those within the Department of Justice who oppose Donald Trump. We cover that and two major resignations among dozens of Department of Justice prosecutors in light of being ordered to do unethical things by the Trump administration, by Emile Beauvais, and why it matters. We cover it on Legal AF, the podcast. Take a listen. You got Jack Smith and hundreds of other federal prosecutors doing an unprecedented thing, writing an open letter to the people, their colleagues, telling them to hold the line. Why don't you tie it all together at the appropriate point? I'll read from the letter, okay?
Sure. By the way, when you were talking about Emile Beauvais and Salty put up a picture of him, I was like, God, he looks so much like Lurch from the Addams Family. Salty, you have to look at Salty. You have to find a picture, put them side by side, and you'll see what I mean. I'm telling you, he looks like Lurch from the Addams Family, and he's acting just like.
And he's wearing this job on his face. I mean, you should see from what did he look like 3-4 years ago when we were introduced to him as a criminal defense lawyer from Donald Trump till now. Oh my God, he looks like the soul is being sucked out of him. It is. Yeah. So talk about the prosecutors. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, we've been doing this show now 4 years, and I've always been the former prosecutor because that's what I did my whole career. I spent almost 30 years as a prosecutor at the Manhattan DA's office. And that's my first job out of law school. And that's what I did my whole career. And for the last 4 years, while we've been doing this show, every time we talk about prosecutors and we talk about all the cases against Donald Trump, and whether it's Jack Smith, who I used to work with back in the day at the Manhattan DA's office, or any of the other federal prosecutors or the state prosecutors who prosecuted Donald Trump, I see the eyes rolling, the virtual eyes rolling when I use the following phrase, when I say that prosecutors really do, they're true believers, and they really do follow the facts wherever they lead. They're not political. They implement their discretion without fear or favor, and that's a phrase that we all use. And people get sick of hearing it because it does sound a little like overused. But it's being a prosecutor in so many ways for so many people. It's not what you do; it's who you are. It's your worldview. It's your word means everything. Your ethics mean everything. It's all about doing the right thing always, and that's just, it becomes so much of who you are and how you conduct yourself. And you have that responsibility because as much as it's an adversarial system, as a prosecutor, you have to also uphold a defendant's rights. You have to care about the system as a whole. It's not just about winning or winning at all costs. In fact, it's the opposite of that. It's about justice and what justice means, and about doing the right thing without fear or favor. And that's just something that it's ingrained in you, and it's who you are. And then obviously people who believe in that are self-selecting, and they go there and they become that even more. They're trained to be that way. There's only one thing that can get you fired as a prosecutor, at least, when I knew it, what prosecutors were like, and there's only one thing you can do to get you fired, and that's to lie, because it's all about telling the truth and your ethics and doing the right thing. People make mistakes, etc., but you do something wrong or corrupt. That's when you're done, you're out, and that means something. And it means something. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with being a Democrat or being a Republican. You're going to prosecute people who you agree with what they believe in and what they say and what they do, and ones that you disagree with. And it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's all about justice and what happened, et cetera, and following the facts and implement and applying the law. And that's what being a prosecutor truly, truly, truly is. And that is what we have seen in living color here with all of the prosecutors that that are resigning in mass and taking a very public stand and leaking their letters of resignation, et cetera, so that the world sees what's going on. This is not about being a Democrat or being a Republican or being politically motivated. Danielle Sassoon was a 38-year-old rising star in the Republican Party. She was Ivy League. She clerked for Justice Scalia, and she was absolutely, she was a Federalist Society member. She was the darling of the Republicans, so much so that, and she was brilliant and well respected at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. And she was chosen as the acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District while Jay Clayton gets nominated and confirmed by the Senate as the U.S. Attorney, who's the official nominee of Donald Trump. So she was there, and she was there not very long when Emile Beauvais orders her to dismiss the case, the corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And the reasons that were given were stated explicitly. It was for political reasons. It had nothing to do with the substance of the case. It had nothing to do with whether the case was provable, whether there was the strength of the case. There are people who thought the case wasn't very strong, frankly, and there are people who thought that the case had potential weaknesses in it. And because corruption cases are very, very hard to prove, especially since the courts have walked back the definitions of bribery and what a quid pro quo in a public official setting actually means. And so some people thought that the case wasn't the strongest case, but the prosecutors felt they could prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And the reasons that were given were for political reasons, basically, essentially saying what Emile Beauvais told Danielle Sassoon in no uncertain terms, that this interferes with Mayor Adams' ability to implement Trump's agenda, period, full stop. And that's the reason. She took notes during the meeting. Her notes and others' notes were confiscated at the end of the meeting, which is unheard of. I've never heard of such a thing. And she was ordered to do it. And she wrote a scathing letter of resignation where she set out her reasons why. And it was because she was asked to do the opposite of what I just described for a very long time, what a prosecutor is, and about being ethical and about following the facts wherever they lead without fear or favor. And this is infusing and injecting politics into justice, a place that does not exist. And it put in her letter that, in fact, they were going to supersede the indictment. They had more instances of crimes. She herself reviewed the case and felt they could prove it beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. And this wasn't substantive. And you know what Emile Beauvais said in that meeting and then put in writing? He said, this is basically like we did to get Brittany Griner home, like Joe Biden did with Brittany Griner when she was being held by Russia. And we sent Victor Bout, the merchant of death. He's this known killer assassin, Russian assassin that was incarcerated. And he says, look, sometimes we do things like that. Sometimes we make deals with the devil for politics. And he equated it with Victor Bout. He literally then put it in his letter to Danielle Sassoon, explaining the reasons why he did this, and just kept digging in that, look, we have complete discretion. We can do whatever we want. And this is what we're doing. And this is why we're doing it. Didn't even try to say that it was about the weaknesses of the case, et cetera. He then, after she resigned, he transferred the case to Washington, and he had the entire public integrity section come and into a room. I think there was 30 people. People were furiously texting from that room not to me, but to other friends of mine that are former prosecutors, basically saying, this is what's happening right now in real time. Help. Get this out far and wide. We are being told that if someone doesn't sign this letter to dismiss this case is going to be dismissed. And finally someone stepped up. They said they would sign the letter to prevent their entire group of 30 colleagues from getting fired. but others resigned. And I think something like 7 or 8 prosecutors have resigned. And, interestingly, today in court, and I know we're going to talk about this later, today was a hearing in court on the Mayor Adams case, and to dismiss that case. The only one who showed up was Emile Beauvais. No one else came. No one else was willing to do this. And the reasons people are giving for resignation is because they are being asked to do things. They are being weaponized, frankly, and that's who the head of the criminal division in Washington, D.C. was asked by Ed Martin, who's going to be the U.S. attorney down there. Ms. Chung was basically asked to open up investigations into political rivals. And she said, no, I'm not doing it. And so she resigned. And she also has a great reputation. So we're losing career prosecutors. And, interestingly, there's a letter, this open letter that you referred to that you're going to read from. It's a great letter. And it basically is to write to all the prosecutors who are still there, because they believe in what they do, basically saying, we see you, we support you, stand strong. But I think you should read from the letter. Really
I agree with you. Yeah, that's a good perspective. All the people that are resigning, Danielle Sassoon, she was about to re-indict Mayor Adams, not dismiss the case. She asked for permission from Main Justice, meaning Emile Beauvais and Pam Bondi, to bring new charges against him for lying to the FBI and for destroying evidence. Pretty serious charges. They said, no, we won't let you supersede the indictment, because we're going to get rid of it and we're going to say the quiet power out loud. We're going to these idiots actually said, we're going to just mention the quid pro quo. We're going to talk about it because we think we're allowed to do it, as opposed to just saying, we've made a policy decision that we're going to dismiss the indictment. Now, Judge Dale Ho, it was the worst draw for Trump to have pulled in New York. I don't think there would be many that would be very good for him. Here's an open letter they sent to let the people within the Department of Justice know that they've got friends and they've got their back and they need to hold the line. Open letter to career federal prosecutors dated February 17th. Like you, each of us devoted years of our professional lives to pursuing justice on behalf of the American people. Although we dutifully carried out the law enforcement priorities of the executive branch, irrespective of who headed it, the oath we swore was to the Constitution, not to the President, Attorney General, or any other individual. Our obligations didn't stop at the oath we took to support and defend the Constitution. They included upholding a set of values that have guided the United States Department of Justice for decades. These values are ingrained in the department's DNA, as exemplified by the principles of federal prosecution, which were written to ensure that federal prosecutors exercise their tremendous power fairly, without regard to partisan politics, and in furtherance of the rule of law. As prosecutors, the letter continues, we were rightly prohibited from making criminal charging decisions based on someone's political association, activities, or beliefs, or because of our personal feelings about them. We knew it was impermissible to treat a defendant more leniently just because they were powerful or well-connected, or more harshly because they were not. Skipping ahead a bit, we knew these values were more than just requirements in a manual. They were foundational to a fair and just legal system. We upheld them no matter who was president. Against this backdrop, we have watched with alarm as these values have been tested by recent actions of the department's leadership. Welcome back. That was Karen Friedman Agnifilo, my colleague, and myself. We do a show called Legal AF, 5 years in the making. The OG podcast, top 10 in the world because of you. We sit at the intersection of law and politics, so you don't have to. We bring you that show Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the Midas Touch Network, the #1 Midas Touch Network. That's a testament to all the hard work that you put in to join us in our pursuit of justice and truth. So again, if you know about Legal AF, you're part of our audience. We thank you for being there. I'm really humbled by it. If you don't know about it, here's a personal invitation to join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube and wherever you get your audio podcasts from. We are independent. We don't have outside investors. We are people-powered. We are organically growing by word of mouth, and we need your help. And while you're there, take a minute, hit our free subscribe button right here for the Legal AF YouTube channel as well. Until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.